Huh? Cold? I don't care. Reflect on it overnight, in there. Through the door separating us, my mother-in-law Elizabeth yelled at me and locked me in the bathroom. Then simply walked away. Outside was freezing cold. The leftover bath water was too cold for any comfort. Shivering and in tears, I reached out to my husband for help, only to hear, "It's your own fault for always complaining. You brought this on yourself. I'm going to sleep. You're not thrown outside, are you? You always overreact." His words didn't feel like they could come from someone I shared a blood relation with. Little did I know that this would lead to what happened the next morning. My name is Kate, a 33-year-old office worker. I met my husband John through a friend and married him a year ago after 2 years of dating. He was a man of few words, but intelligent, which drew me to him, but I'm already regretting this marriage. Of course, there's a reason for that. His family home is far away, and frankly, I somewhat dread visiting it. My family home is from Grandpa's time, a bit old-fashioned. These were the words my husband said to me when we were going back to his hometown to greet his parents-in-law. His grandparents had passed away a few years ago, and now it's just the parents-in-law living there. Well, even if it's old, it's still inhabited. So maybe it's like a historic home. These days, that kind of thing is in vogue, so I was a little excited as we headed to my husband's family home. This place? I was so surprised by the building in front of me that I had to ask my husband if we were at the right place. Can people really live here? It's more than just a little old. In fact, to put it another way, albeit a bit rudely, it looked like it might fall apart at any moment. Mysterious plants were climbing the exterior walls, which my husband explained were there for shade. Some of the second-floor windows were broken and had been patched up with cardboard from the inside. My family home isn't a mansion, but it wasn't like this, not even my grandparents' house. The house next to my husband's family home had a well-maintained garden, and I couldn't help but compare. Without paying any mind to my overwhelmed state, my husband walked up to the entrance and, without ringing the doorbell, energetically opened the door. "Hey, we're here!" Then the parents-in-law appeared from the back of the house. "You must be tired from the long journey. Come in!" I felt a bit relieved seeing their smiling faces. Every step we took inside, the floorboards creaked. The house was old inside too, but we managed to finish our greetings and then headed back home. What an incredible house. Although I was shocked, it didn't make me reconsider my marriage to my husband. We wouldn't be visiting often, so I decided to brace myself and do my best whenever we did. Getting married often reveals unseen sides of your partner, and I learned that my husband really treasures his belongings. "Want to buy a new shirt? Look, this one's neck is all stretched out." When I pointed out his stretched out shirt, he proudly countered, No, it's still good to wear. This kind of wear adds character, like distressed jeans." One could say it's good to value things, but it bothered me when he would comment on my belongings too. I've been using my mobile phone for 3 years now. The battery's not great, and I'm thinking of getting a new one. While I was excitedly browsing catalogs, he said, "Why? It still works, right? Isn't it better to wait until it breaks? It's coming out of our household budget, and mobile phones aren't cheap." My husband complained to me, "It's too late if it breaks." But he did have a point. Mobile phones are not cheap. And after his comment, I felt hesitant to buy a new one when my husband had been using his phone for 5 years. Though I had my disagreements, our newlywed life continued peacefully. My husband John isn't picky about food and always finishes everything I cook, saying it's delicious. It was gratifying to cook for him. "Let's go to my parents' house for Thanksgiving. It's been a while, and Mom keeps nagging me to visit." I braced myself at my husband's words, but I was determined. There, I made a new discovery at my husband's family home. "You both came! It's good to see you!" The house, which I hadn't seen for months, was as usual, with its exterior vines creepily flourishing due to the summer sun. While making small talk, my father-in-law Daniel asked us to help weed the garden. Despite my reluctance due to the strong sunshine, I couldn't refuse and went outside. Standing there, I was sweating so much I felt like collapsing. Suddenly, I felt a gaze and saw the neighbors standing in their garden, staring at us. I said hello, but when they noticed my parents-in-law, they made a puzzled face and went inside. Elizabeth then said, "Don't bother greeting people like that, Kate. That person's not right in the head." I was startled by her loud voice. After about an hour, we finished, and the garden, previously overrun with weeds, was completely clean. "You must be sweaty. Go ahead and take a bath." That's when I realized I'd never seen the bathroom in my husband's family home. I followed my husband, who had picked up a change of clothes, into what I thought was a storage shed in the garden. I quietly asked John, "What's Daniel doing with a change of clothes in there?" "It's a bath," he replied nonchalantly. "Our house has an outdoor bathroom." I was visibly shaken by his words. Huh, a bath? I thought it was a storage shed. Later, I learned that my husband's family home originally didn't have a bathroom. They used to use a relative's nearby, but when the relative moved, they decided to add one. However, there was no space inside, so they installed it in the garden over 30 years ago. The bathhouse's walls had deteriorated due to weather exposure. I was in shock, and didn't want to enter. But I needed to wash off the sweat. I wanted to wash off my sweaty body right away. I had brought a change of clothes since Elizabeth had insisted we stay over before we came. I'll endure it. I need to wash. After debating with myself, I decided to take a bath. Surprisingly, it was clean and looked like a typical bath. Relieved, I soon realized something, and called John back. "Wait, John, where's the lock?" He casually replied, "A lock? There isn't one. It's inside our property, so it's fine." I exclaimed, "No lock here either?" There was a reason for my shock. The toilet in my husband's family home also doesn't have a lock. It was unlikely that someone would enter. But it was still unsettling in someone else's home. The most shocking was their habit of not locking the front door. It seemed there was no custom of locking anything, and people with business at the house would just open the door and call out. "Elizabeth, the world's dangerous these days." I tried to encourage locking up, but she dismissed it, saying, "This is the countryside. Besides, there's no one around here wicked enough to steal." That left me uneasy. In the end, I quickly took my bath, anxious and eager to get out. Being a worrier, I slept clutching my valuables. From now on, I decided to definitely refuse to stay overnight when visiting my husband's family. I had made up my mind. As the seasons changed from summer to autumn and winter, and the end of the year approached, I began to experience more stomach aches. We hadn't planned to visit my husband's family for the year-end holidays, but a few days ago, he suddenly said, "Looks like Uncle and cousins are coming over for New Year's Eve. Mom is insisting that we come. Kate, you haven't met them yet, right? Think of it as just showing your face, please." He suddenly said something like that. We hadn't had a wedding ceremony, just a dinner with both families. So I hadn't met my husband's relatives yet. It seemed Elizabeth already knew we were coming, and I was really annoyed at my husband's selfish decision. "Hey, don't decide on your own. We agreed to visit my family this year, remember? My mom is looking forward to it." My husband got a little angry at my words. "What can I do about it? Isn't it normal to visit the husband's family? Sometimes you're a bit selfish." He said that. What? Selfish? That doesn't make sense. I was furious. The atmosphere between us remained tense until we left to visit his family. I began to think maybe we were too different in values, especially with his tendency to hold on to things too long. My stomach aches persisted. It was during our trip to his family's house for the year-end. Unable to stand the awkward silence, he said, "Hey, I asked Dad to put locks on the doors. I'm sorry." Seeing his apologetic face, "It's okay. Thanks for the lock thing," I quietly replied. Little did I know what would happen a few hours later. When we arrived at his family's home, the relatives had already gathered. The small house felt suffocating with so many people, but everyone was really nice. When they learned about my university and workplace, an uncle said, "That's impressive. John, you married a wonderful person." I smiled and thanked him for his polite remark. My husband and his family seemed displeased, hearing our conversation. I felt a chill down my spine, but didn't think much of it. After the uncles left, leaving just us and the parents-in-law, the room temperature seemed to drop. "It's cold. Let's take turns in the bath and then go to bed." I glanced at Elizabeth, who seemed her usual self. Daniel usually bathes first, so while waiting inside, Elizabeth said, "By the way, Kate, isn't it a bit self-centered to ask for locks? Look, we put one on for you." I was surprised when Elizabeth told me to go to the bathroom. I was shocked to see the lock on the toilet was on the outside. Just a simple hook. What is this? I forced a smile. "Let us know when you want it locked," and she said with a malicious grin. I thought, what a spiteful person. This is ridiculous. It's not a prison, so don't mess around. As the daughter-in-law, I was last for the bath, and stepping outside, the extreme cold made me shiver. It was an unusually snowy year for the region. The bathhouse door had the same type of lock as the toilet, again, on the outside. Frustrated, I entered the cold, drafty cabin. Just awful. Then, as soon as I entered, I heard someone lock the door from the outside. "Who's there? John?" Trembling from the cold and fear, I asked the person outside. "John said he was going to bed. I can't wait for your bath to be over. And I'm going to sleep too. Good night then." Elizabeth laughed mockingly and started to leave. Of course, the door was closed and wouldn't open. If Elizabeth left, I wouldn't be able to get out of here. "Elizabeth, wait, please! Open the door! I'll be trapped here!" I banged on the door with my numb hand. "You're so noisy! Don't shout like that! It was you who wanted the door locked. Plus, you mocked me earlier, didn't you?" "What? What is she talking about? Is she out of her mind? What are you talking about? Just open the door, please!" I felt like I was going to explode with anger. "Just because you went to a slightly better college than John, you brag about it. You must be looking down on me in your heart for not having a college degree, right?" It was the first time I knew that Elizabeth hadn't gone to college. I only mentioned my college and workplace because she asked. I wish she'd consider how it feels to be subjected to her irrational, educational inferiority complex. "Elizabeth, please, open the door! I'm freezing to death!" As I said this, with a shivering body, cold. I don't care. Reflect on it overnight. There." With those words, Elizabeth hurried back to the house and showed no signs of returning. Tears of frustration rolled down my cheeks. Fortunately, I had my mobile phone with me and shakily called my husband. "Please answer the phone." "Yes?" After a few rings, my husband answered the phone in an irritable voice. "John, help! Elizabeth locked me in the bathroom. Please, come quickly." While I felt relieved, my husband said, "It's your fault for always complaining. You reap what you sow. I'm sleepy and going to bed. You're not thrown outside, so stop overreacting." And he abruptly hung up. I couldn't believe it. At the same time, my mobile phone's battery died. The reception was bad at my husband's family home, and the battery drained quickly, partly because I forgot to charge it last night. I felt pathetic. Despite my efforts to open the door by hitting it with my body, it didn't budge. Desperately, I continued to pound on the door. "Open up! This isn't funny! Please, open the door!" Then, from the other side of the door, are you okay?" My mobile phone rang the next morning. It was a call from my husband. "Yes, what do you want?" I answered coldly. Opposite to me, my husband sounded terribly panicked on the phone. "Hey, Kate, where are you? I thought for sure you were..." He yelled incoherently. His panic was understandable. There were ambulances and police cars parked at his family's home. Seeing this, I too became curious about what had happened. "Just come quickly!" He shouted at me and hung up one-sidedly. As I headed to his family home, thinking how his inability to listen to others ran in the family. My husband was shocked when I appeared just a few minutes after the call. "Where have you been until now? It's her! She's the one who locked Mom in!" While wondering what he was talking about, I saw my parents-in-law glaring at me. Elizabeth was wrapped in a blanket, shivering, perhaps from the cold. What's this situation? And what happened to this lady? One of the police officers approached me and asked, "Your family claims you locked her in. Is that true?" Apparently, Elizabeth had been locked in the bathroom all night by someone. This morning, Daniel, unaware of anything, found Elizabeth, cold, and called an ambulance in a panic. The police were also called, suspecting foul play, and the real culprit was framing me. No, that's not true. I was locked outside of the bathhouse by that person yesterday. Plus, doing something as inhumane as locking someone in is not something I would do. I said this, pointing at Elizabeth. Then, as if he had reached his limit, my husband broke down crying. "It's not like that! I thought it was Kate, and I just wanted to teach her a lesson." Last night, seeing the bathroom light on, my husband assumed I had gotten out of the bathhouse on my own. He locked the door from outside as a punishment, but it was Elizabeth inside. Unaware, he quickly returned to bed and fell asleep. Elizabeth must have panicked after being locked in. But Daniel and my husband are such heavy sleepers. Once asleep, they hardly wake up. Waking up and mistakenly thinking I had locked her in, Daniel, along with the police, was panicking. He didn't realize he was the real culprit. Hearing the story, my parents-in-law, fearing their son's arrest, continued to blame me. Then, from behind me, "This young lady was at our house all night. That mean woman locked her outside and she was crying. Poor thing." An elderly couple spoke up. They had helped me yesterday. They asked me if I was okay, and then the door quietly opened. The elderly man looked at me with concern and said, "Come to our house. It's cold here. Let's make some warm drinks," inviting me to their home next to my husband's family home. I couldn't stop my tears of gratitude. Once I calmed down and told them what my husband's family had done, the couple was outraged and said, "We were worried about you since we saw you in the summer. This family is crazy. You should leave him." I had already decided to do so. I could have lost my life in this incident. Continuing as his wife was impossible. I charged my mobile phone at their house. After hearing from the elderly couple, the police seemed to understand the situation and said, "Please tell us your side," looking coldly at my husband's family. "What? You mean you guys trespassed on our property, right? I'll sue you. Be ready." Daniel was so bitter, even towards the elderly couple, opposite to the raging parents-in-law. "Is that so? Then we will also sue. You have been entering our garden when we are not around and stealing our roses every year. It's all on the security cameras. You have trampled our flower beds, and we have had enough." Hearing the man's words, my parents-in-law immediately quieted down. "Kate, I didn't mean for this to happen. I'm sorry. Please," Elizabeth pleaded tearfully. But of course, I couldn't forgive her. "Elizabeth, you once said that there are no dirty thieves around here, yet I was almost killed because of your ridiculous educational complex. I will never come here again. And as for your stupid son, I'm returning him right now." I said this to my husband's family. My husband was crying and apologizing, but there was no way I could forgive him. I returned to my parents' house, and against my stubborn husband's refusal to divorce, I said, "I'll settle this incident on the condition of divorce. If you don't understand, consult a lawyer." Reluctantly, the police agreed to the divorce. I wanted to divorce him as soon as possible. I haven't seen my ex-husband since. Years later, surrounded by my new husband and adorable daughter, I live a peaceful life. Despite everything, I wonder if those hardships led to my current happiness. As we watch the morning news, I spit out my coffee in surprise. Please look at the footage of the record-breaking hurricane. This house has been completely destroyed, roof and all. More than the announcer broadcasting live, I was drawn to the building and the people in the background. It was unmistakably my ex-husband's family home, with an older-looking ex-parents-in-law desperately holding onto the walls. The elderly couple next door might have moved out. Their house was demolished and turned into an empty lot. Worried about my reaction, my current husband and daughter asked if I was okay, and I just laughed. It's nothing.